This was not a Presbyterian church. Please remember this. She found her place in the pew where she usually sits. The church was decorated for Easter, as most churches are, beautifully decorated for Easter. Most of the pews were filled with people. It was Easter Sunday. And the young minister got up to preach a sermon. That's when the trouble began. He talked about spring and how beautiful the flowers are. And how after a long winter, all this beauty comes out into the world. And even threw in the Easter bunny. But not one word. So it was not a Presbyterian church. Now, I told you that. Not one word about Jesus the Christ, who broke the chains of death and hell and came victorious from the grave. Not one word. And so Doris, after the benediction was said, took her 3 children in tow and marched across the street to the Lutheran church, where she thought and believed, at least the Lutherans will get Jesus out of the tomb. I hope they did. Now, Doris didn't leave her church over this one bad Easter Sunday morning. She stayed. She became a pillar of her congregation. But for 60 plus years, every time a new minister came to that church, she told them about that Easter Sunday in 1952, when she had to march across the street to the Lutheran church to get Jesus out of the tomb. She put them on alert, those preachers who came to her church. You better get Jesus out of the tomb on Easter morning. Well, now, this church is looking for a new preacher, right? So we have this pastoral nominating committee, PNC, and they're working hard. They're meeting every week. They're praying. They're talking to people. They're making phone calls. They're writing emails. They're doing all this work. They're working really, really hard. And most of them, I think, are in the congregation this morning, the PNC. Some of them are even wearing a tie, which I've never seen before. Chris. So if you're a member of the PNC, would you mind standing for just a minute? Just all of the members of the Pastoral Nominating Committee, some have bonnets on, and just remain standing for just a minute. And if you wouldn't mind, would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I promise that I will never bring to this church as a pastor or teacher a person who leaves Jesus in the tomb on Easter Sunday. Now you can sit down. Don't you feel better now? I feel so much better, Chris. You want to testify here a little bit? Or you're gonna keep your promise now, right? All right. Easter Sunday. It's when we find it easy to believe, isn't it? I drove into the parking lot here at 6:10 this morning, and I saw that white cloth around the cross. And oh, my heart leaped for joy. This is Easter Sunday. But it's not easy to believe. Not after Easter, then we have to go into, that daily struggle. It's a struggle for our soul, really. It's a struggle. Don't minimize that. It's a struggle for our soul to believe. And it's not always easy. In fact, one of my favorite writers, but I can't remember which one it was either Frederick Buechner or it was Eugene Peterson, both Presbyterians. One of them I read recently said, we wake up in the morning and we ask ourselves the question, can I believe again today? And if we say yes more than 50% of the time, we're in make-believe. It's a struggle to believe. It's a fight for our soul. As we read the text of the Easter story this morning, it says that Mary Magdalene went back to the disciples after she found the tomb was empty, and she told them, somebody has robbed the grave. And so two of them, Peter and the other disciple, we don't know who exactly that was, the two of them race to the empty tomb. And they both look in. Peter actually goes in. It's empty. And then it says, the other disciple saw and believed. And that is followed by a very interesting sentence that says, they still did not understand. Isn't that interesting? That's the way it works for us on Easter. We believe, but we don't always understand. Life is a mystery. Life is miracle and mystery. And when we believe, we don't leave all of our doubts behind. The struggle of belief is that struggle between doubt, unbelief, and faith, belief, and they belong together. We struggle. We fight to believe again, and we believe one morning, and then the next morning we find it hard to believe. That doubt and that struggle always are there and need to be there. For we never believe uncritically. We never believe and stop thinking. There are always reasons that we shouldn't believe, and so we struggle. We struggle between faith and doubt. That's part of the process. That's normal. If you wake up some morning and you find it hard to believe, you're in the right place. They believed, but they didn't understand. Don't wait to understand everything. If you're waiting, I first need to understand everything, and then I will believe. Don't do that. We believe, and yet we don't understand. We take the faith commitment, knowing that we'll never understand everything. And on those days when I can't believe, you believe for me, you see. You hold me. You keep me. As I hold on, you love me and believe for me until I can believe again. You see, that's the way it works. And when you can't believe, I believe for you, and I hold you as you hang on. That's why we have a church, you see. That's why we have a church. I can't believe without you. You're absolutely essential to my salvation. I can't believe without your belief, your prayers. I see you believing, and I see you loving and caring and working, and I'm filled again with the possibility of belief because I see it in you. We're able to believe because we have each other. I wouldn't even try to believe without you. I know I couldn't do it, and neither can you. We hold each other in this thing called belief. And we never understand it all. Actually, if you run into somebody who understands everything, beware. Watch out. There are plenty of preachers who have all the answers. There are plenty of politicians who have all the answers. There are plenty of philosophers and pundits. I'm running out of P words here. I try to beware of that, because all cults and true believing excesses and all fanaticism and all radical behavior and all hatred, all of that stuff comes out of the cloth, is cut from the cloth of people who think, I have all the answers. Nobody does. Not even we, people of faith. We believe, but we don't yet quite understand. We're always in process. We're always humbly believing, not arrogant, not in your face rude, but humbly confessing. This is where I am now. This is what I believe now. And if I can invite you to believe with me, but never arrogant, never push, never force. Humble believers. We believe and doubt, and we don't always know all the answers. When I was a kid, especially when I was in the 5th grade, I remember this. I got fascinated by astronomy. And instead of reading lessons I would sneak back in the back of the classroom, and there was a place I could hide, and I would get out an astronomy book. I was fascinated by astronomy, reading all about the planets. I memorized all 9 of them, and the constellations and the stars, and I studied all that, and it was just amazing to me. But I realize now I have to relearn some of what I learned when I was in the 5th grade. Pluto, which is the last planet in our solar system, has now been degraded. It's now a dwarf planet. I don't know if you know this. About 15 years ago, researchers at Caltech said there's another planet out there, and they've named it for now Planet 9. Someday they hope to name a real name to it. They're going to call it George. I don't know why. That's what they want to call it. They're going to call it George. George is about 20 times bigger than the Earth in mass. And it takes George 20,000 years, 20,000 of our years, to make its revolution around the sun. But guess what? They've never seen it. Our telescopes right now aren't good enough, aren't large or powerful enough to be able to see George, Planet 9. How do they know it's there? They know it's there because it has to be there, because of the gravitational pull of something, the way the other pieces of our solar system react. The effect of something is causing that, you see. There's got to be Planet 9 because of the effect that it has on the rest of the solar system. That's almost a parable of Easter. We look at the disciples, and they were full of fear. They were behind locked doors. They were scared. They were defeated. They were at the end of their rope. They didn't know where to turn. How do you explain the change? The change can only be explained in one way. The presence of the living Christ caused the effect, the change in their lives. In a sense, that's That's how we believe too, isn't it? That's what we do. That's what happens to us. We don't actually see the risen Christ the way the disciples did. What we see is the effect of the risen Christ on the lives of people. We see people love and forgive and serve and sacrifice and sing and become or able to be surviving the worst kinds of things, walk through the most difficult days. And we know that we're looking at the effect of the risen Christ alive in this world. Someone in a very beautiful essay began the essay right like this. Beautiful essay. You should read it sometime. It starts like this. There are only two ways to live in this world. One is to believe that nothing is a miracle. And the other is to believe that everything is a miracle. It sounds like one of the Desert Fathers or one of the saints of Christian history. And the person who said that was Albert Einstein, the greatest scientist of them all, who looked at the universe and said, mystery, miracle, everywhere. That's what happens to us because of Easter. Because we see and believe the big miracle. We see miracles everywhere. All over the place. If we look, we'll see. Amen.